Howdy, folks, and good morning. Welcome to the super spooky Halloween edition of this month's Catch Up with Keeper webinar series. All right, while we give people an opportunity to pile on in here, hop on into the chat and let us know where you're signing in from. I am not in my normal Austin haunt. I am right now in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Wow, whole lot of states and countries present. Thank you all for making the time. Seeing some snow has already fallen in places. I'm looking outside my window, and I don't think we're anywhere close to it here in Virginia, nor in Texas, for that matter. Wow. All right, folks. Well, it is 2 minutes past top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and dive in. So once again, thank you all so much for taking the time. It is truly my pleasure. We've got a great one for you today. In case this is your first ever Catch Up with Keeper webinar, there's basically 3 stages. First is we talk about all the new features we've shipped over the last month. Second, we have a app showcase that is broadly defined. It's something that we think people might find interesting. This month, it is a particularly timely overview by yours truly of our 1099s functionality and how you can use it to improve the process of screening for vendors who may need a 1099, collecting the requisite missing W-9 or other source documentation. And so super excited to share that with y'all. And then, of course, we will have Q&A. This being a sort of unique session, we'll probably break things into 2 separate Q&A, one about the latest product updates and one about the 1099s, just so that we can have that be a single discrete unit so that if people want to watch that or share it for training purposes, they can get the recording afterwards. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and dive in and share my screen here. So okay. First things first, for those of you who are a fan of the 3 letters CYA, we have a new report for you, and that is the income statement detail, or the P&L detail. This is a report that I know many of y'all deliver to your customers at month end as part of your management reporting package, and I'm excited to announce that you can now include that in your management reporting pack in Keeper. So this will look just the same as any other P&L detail that you deliver outside of QuickBooks. Very, very similar report, same exact structure. And the way that you add it is you click Add Report here, and then we already have it here. But if you don't, you'll see it in your Add Report. This is also something you can put into your management report templates and then copy from client to client if you want to do things that way as well. All right. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hop back over to the close page. That is where most of the updates we've shipped have taken place this month. And I think the first and most visual change is the updates we've made to the non-closing task and closing task areas. That's what we call these. So one of the really common pieces of feedback we've gotten from customers who are long tenured customers, as well as customers who are first getting exposed to Keeper, is that the non-closing tasks and the closing tasks are like they kind of blend together. It's way too hard to see like what's going to repeat according to the closing cycle and what's going to repeat according to its own custom logic. So we broke them out into these what we call areas. And so all of your closing tasks are now in your tasks for June 2022. You'll see them right here. And then all of your non-closing tasks have their own custom area here too. And that way, if you're just working on the close, you can just collapse your non-closing tasks, and then you'll be able to see these, see this collapsed if you toggle from client to client. All right. Next major set of changes I'm excited to talk about is our upgrades to our commenting system. Our commenting system has gotten a huge visual overhaul, as well as we've added a ton more functionality. So if you click the comments button, that'll show you our new comments UI. And here you can see a few things. So first and foremost, it just feels like a normal commenting system that you'd be used to using in any 21st century application. And that's because our designer built it, not me. And in here, you can also do a few more things that you weren't previously able to do. So first and foremost, you can edit your comments. You can only edit your own comments, so you can't like go in and edit other people's comments. It still applies the same permissioning logic that you would expect from any accounting-focused application. You can now delete your own comments. You can mark comments as unread, and you can copy the link to a comment. So if you copy a link to a comment, this is actually super powerful if you are like reviewing lots of comments in series. And this was one of the most common complaints about our existing commenting system. So if you go and paste that link that you've copied, or you send that link to someone, you'll see that pops up once the page finishes loading. Sometimes my demo file can be finicky on me. There we go. So once the page finishes loading, you can see all of your comments here, and you can see the actual transaction that those comments were left on. And the same general principle applies if you comment on a task, if you comment on a question, your client questions, reports. So wherever you leave a comment, you have the option to deep link directly to that comment rather than needing to go into the close and try and find the thing that the comment was left on. And then last but not least, you also have the ability to emoji react to comments. So this is a great way where you don't need to like just say like, yes, approved, or I've seen this before. You could just leave an emoji reaction. And if you hover over that, you can see who left the emoji reaction as well. All right. So that's the upgrades for comments. And then the next major upgrade we made to the close page is in your files. So not all of you have access to this yet, but if you are in the beta, you have access to a new button here called Files. And so that's actually the first change that I'll talk about. Previously, Files was kind of buried. You had to go to Info, and then there was a tab here called Files. Now Files gets top billing right here on the close page as its own button. Click here to Files. And then the major change is we now have custom folders. So previously everything was kind of auto-organized in Keeper. So basically, if you drag and dropped a file onto a task, that would determine the structure of where that file sits. And that's still the case. And so if you don't care at all about custom folders, if you don't want to do anything here, then you can, by all means, just ignore this section ignore this area. And then your auto-organized folders are still the exact same. And you can drill down to your pre-close and get all of the files that you've attached to wherever. However, we also have custom folders, and custom folders is literally just a normal file system, the way you're used to using it, the way like Google Drive and Dropbox and your Mac file or your Mac Finder or your File Explorer in Windows. It literally just works the exact same way. One of my favorite features about this new custom folder structure is that you can actually copy it from client to client. So you can copy it from DemoCo, for example, if you built something out that you like, to 1801 brands. So you can copy your file structure anytime that you want to sort of use something that you like in another client. Second thing that we've done is you can also now upload. If you have like a bunch of files you've been storing in a Google Drive or some other file system, and you want to migrate all of those files into Keeper, we made it super easy to do that as well. All you need to do is you click Add Files here. And then here we can just drag and drop. So we've got a file folder system here. And you can see we've got Docker H files, credit cards, and then we've got all our credit cards broken out by year. And we've got 2022 and 2023, so a bunch of files. All we need to do is just drag and drop this Docker H file folder into our file system, and then click Submit. It's going to take a second here to upload everything. And voila, we have all of our files right here in Keeper. Everything works the exact same way you're used to managing a file system. And there's nothing more that you need to do. From here, everything else flows very naturally into the rest of the application. You can make files visible or hidden to the client. You can move files around. You can download files. So Everything else works the same, except it now looks like and feels like and operates like a proper file foldering system. Okay. And one last thing to talk about before we sort of shift gears, open up for some Q&A, and then also open up or switch over to the 1099s review. I want to talk about the changes that have happened in Keeper over the last few months. I know this is something that some people have appreciated a ton, other people have found quite frustrating. And I just want to say I hear you. I know we've made a lot of changes in the last few months. So in the last 3 months alone, we've upgraded the close page top nav bar, the task layout here on the close page, the client portal tiles here, and the modal that happens when you click them. Of course, all of comments and all of files that we just talked about. And that's a lot of change, and a lot of change of really core functionality. And we really debated on this internally because I know no one likes to have their software change under their feet. Ultimately, we felt like, and still believe, that these changes will help make Keeper a more cohesive, more functional, more flexible user experience that feels more pleasant to open and something that you're more excited to use on a day-to-day basis. But we know change is hard. So that's why I'm excited to announce there's going to be no more radical, broad sweeping changes, at least not over the next like 3 to 6 months. So you can basically, we needed to like unclunk a bunch of Keeper. And I think finally, for the first time, we could say the close page is not clunky anymore. Certainly, we have our quirks that we need to iron out. But I think for the first time, this is something where you can go to this page and there's not anything obviously punching you in the face. So, so I appreciate y'all all for sticking with us. And you can now, like, if you were holding off on taking screenshots of things and adding documentation, I promise you that is all over. It's all in the past. And we're going to keep this page looking the same for the foreseeable future. All right. And with that, I will open it up to some Q&A. So I will pop open the Q&A. If you left your Q&A in the chat, by the way, if you could also add that to the Q&A, that will make it easier for us to find. Okay. Casey asked, where do you find the comment feed? I'm not seeing it. Already logged out and logged back in. So the comments will show up wherever you leave comments. So just like normal, if you open up your expense inconsistency report and click here, that will open up the comment feed that's tied to this particular transaction. Similarly, if you wanted to leave a comment on the task as whole, also a comment button there. And there's comments everywhere. So there's comments on your financial statements. There's comments on your, let's say a client asks you a question and you want to sidebar with a team member about it. You can click the comment button here, and that will always open the feed that's tied directly to that particular object. That said, if you want to see all of your comments put together, you can see those right here at the top on your comments feed. There are different filters here. So unread, subscribed, and all comments. And then also back on the client list, you have a chats column right here. And then you can also filter this chats comment for chats with new unread, or sorry, comments with new unread comments. Okay. Rebecca asked, will this session recording be available? The answer is yes. And also asked, how do I get added to the files beta? Great question. I think 200 or 300 folks have signed up for the beta. So really, really appreciate your support there. We are letting folks in slowly, but also we are probably going to release Files 2.0 into general availability within the next 1 to 2 weeks. So this is not going to be a long beta like our AI program is. This is going to be this is going to be in our sort of general availability in fairly short order. Okay, Danielle had a similar question. Yeah, files should be live in everyone's app in the next sort of 1 to 2 weeks. Okay, Shaolin asked, can we drag a file folder to a Google Drive? No, but not to my knowledge, actually, I can't say that we've tested it. It's maybe possible by happenstance, but you can download, or at least you should be. This may be one of the things that's still in beta. You can download all of your files, bulk download your files, maybe not. Yeah, so this is one of the things about the software still being in beta. You will be able to download your files and then just drag and drop them into Google Drive. Melissa asked, what is the storage capacity in the file system? That's a really good question. We don't have any limits on file storage in the aggregate. That said, we do have a per file limit of 100 megabytes. So you can't upload like an HD movie, but other than that, there's no limits on files. Des asked, does adding additional documents in the clients slow down the keeper client file? And the answer is no. This should not affect performance in any way. Lisa asked, does the custom folder structure copy from close to close? This is a great question. And I think this is one of the things that was so confusing about like Keeper's old file system versus our new file system. So this is basically, you can think of this like a file system that's tied to this client. So it's not actually tied to the close. So in that sense, you can always go and drag and drop. Like you can, if you create a new close for a new folder for each close in the custom folder system, you'll continue to do that in the custom folders. The auto-organized folders is the folder set where basically if you drag and drop a file, for example, that's in the June 2022 close, then it will automatically show up in one of your auto-organized folders, and that is sort of tied to the concept of the close and keeper. Okay, Cindy asked, if you file credit card statements, for example, is it just a preference whether you want to file those attached to the reconciliation versus the standard file system versus both? It's a really good question. Ultimately, it's going to a little bit be subject to user preference on this. The main difference is like if we go to our account reconciliations here, for example, so we've got Brex Cash here attached. And if we go to our files, we've got our closing sections, account recs, and then Brex Cash. So if this is the way you like to have, let's see if I have one with a little bit more set up here. Okay, yeah. So if this is the way you like your structure built out, so you basically have a folder of all of your accounts, and then a folder for every year, and then a file for every relevant file, for every statement that shows we've got January, February, March, April, and so on. If that's the way you like your file set up, then you don't need to do any extra work here. You can just drag and drop the file right onto the task because this is auto-organized. So this will auto-build out this file tree. However, if you want it a different way, that's what you can use the custom folders for statements, for example. Okay, this is not related to the file system, but how do I change the client's name? This is a great question. I'm excited to be able to answer this on a recorded call in case someone searches for it later. You go to your practice settings, you go to all client settings, and then here where you've got the client column here, here's where you can change the name. So you can add or remove LLC, you can change anything there. And then this will save and update everywhere. Okay, someone asked, they don't see anything under files where they can create a folder. That may very well be because you are not in the beta. Okay, another person asked about the file size limit and if we will be charging for more space, not charging for more space. And there's file size limit is 100 megabytes. Okay, someone else asked when the new folder structure will be available. Next 1 to 2 weeks, honestly. So it should be pretty soon. Okay. Brett asked why the ellipses after comments. Can't we just show the additional options? I'm not 100% sure. I know that I understand this question. So let me
possibly at the top of the close page.
Oh, these? Yeah, like after comments. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, honestly, this was a little bit of a design preference. Like these are much less frequently accessed than the other four. So the other four you sort of actively need when you are using Keeper to run a close, whereas these two settings are less frequently accessed. You only need them when you're setting up a client file, or if something is like going wrong in Keeper, whereas the other four just like are required for day-to-day use. So that's why we had these tucked into the ellipses. And it looks like there's a lot of space here, and there is. But if you have a longer client name, that actually will take up some of the space. So our goal was not to use every tiny square centimeter or square inch of real estate here on the screen. So that's why we made that design decision. Jonathan asked, when we'll be adding specific days versus dates to the monthly task. So I assume this is like business days, like first Monday or third business day of the month. That is something that we're working on. I don't have a specific due date, but it is something that we are planning to add. Emma asked, will there be a way to remove non-closing tasks from the homepage so that the clients turn fully green after we finish the close? Totally hear you on this, Emma. We are working on some style improvements to the client list to help you feel like you've actually done your work, especially on the green highlighting, and then also some other upgrades to non-closing tasks specifically on that screen. So some good stuff in the works there soon, but hear you loud and clear on that criticism. Okay, Dawn asked, you said no sweeping changes in the next 3 to 6 months. Does that mean no more robust receipt capture in that time frame? It absolutely does not mean that. So I know it's like a double negation here. Receipt, we're super excited. We have a bunch of really exciting announcements we are sharing in a much sooner time frame than 3 to 6 months about receipt management. But you would be surprised at how little extra UI we need to add into Keeper to build a full-fledged receipt manager. So super excited to share more about that in the coming, probably more like weeks than months, but definitely not a 3 to 6 month time horizon for that feature. Betsy asked, is there a place to create live documents for each client? I think so, and specifically finish up the question in case anyone else has this same workflow. I have created how-to instructions for each client. I want my staff to be able to see and edit those at any time. We currently have them on our OneDrive. Would love to utilize Keeper for this if possible. I can think of 2 suggestions here. The first is in your file system, you could add another folder called how-tos. And then you could make the files in that folder. So we don't have anything in here, but if we added a random document here, you could make this visible to your client, and then your clients in their portal can see their how-tos. So that would be one option here. If you want this, by the way, to like show up closer to the top, you can. This is organized alphabetically, but you can do a little bit. You can get a little bit more clever with that. If you rename, for example, the subfolder with like underscore how-tos, so that's the top of your alphabetizing. So here you can see your how-tos up at the top. So that's one option. Another option is you can make use of Keepers depending on how these documents, like what's actually in these documents. You could also use Keepers resources, and so your resources where you can sort of put text that's editable, refreshable for your clients, and then when your clients go to their portal, they can see they've got their files here as well, and they also have their resources. So there you go. Rachel asked, what is the fastest way to upload files if we don't have the files beta yet? My answer, so our sort of previous workaround was just to like, if you have you just like create a new closing task called other files drop, and then just drag and drop the file into that, or file or files into that task. But so that would be the previous fastest way if you don't have the files beta. But again, beta should be going live in 1 to 2 weeks. Okay, I'm gonna spend about 5 more minutes or so answering questions, and then I will transition over into the 1099s training. So I make sure we keep appropriate time for that. Betsy asks, is there a way to add a compilation letter to my management packet? Not currently. It is something that we have planned for improvements in the management reports. There is a canny somewhere, but I can't fetch it right here on this call. Okay. Is there any, Jennifer asks, is there any way to view the portal as my client sees it? The answer is yes. If you click your portal here, you've got this preview column right here. So if we want to see how Ben sees his portal, you can click preview, and this will show you what their portal looks like. Someone else asked about the client uploads inbox. The specific question was, my client has uploaded files and they show in the client uploads inbox. I've used them and done what I want with them and saved them where I want them, but how do I mark them as done? So this is something that I think will be solved much better in our files 2.0. So right now, you could move them somewhere just to get them out of your queue. But I think longer term, basically you could just have like a completed files or archived files, like files archive in your files 2.0, and then you just be able to move them into that that custom folder. So that would be the long-term solution for those. Brett asked, I already have a client folder system in my Google Drive. Is there any chance that this gets integrated with Keeper? I can't say that is currently on our roadmap, although it is a super commonly requested feature. I will say it is something that custom files supports better, much more natively out of the box. So you can imagine here just a like custom folder that says like Google Drive, for example. So now that we've built the infrastructure here for custom files, I think that may be easier to support, but I can't say that it is something that's currently on our near-term roadmap. Karen asked if we will be sending an email notification when the new file structure is live for everyone. The answer is yes, as we always do every Thursday morning. Anne asked if Keeper possibly slows down or crushed if we store files that are more than 100 gigabytes for overall clients. So the file folder limit, or sorry, the individual file limit is 100 megabytes. But theoretically, if you add like 100 gigabytes worth of 10 megabyte files, the answer is no, that shouldn't cause like huge performance issues. Basically, the reason for that is we don't load gigabytes and gigabytes of data into your browser whenever you just like if you had that many files, we load them when you click the actual file. And so that may take some time. Shannon asked, are clients able to delete or move files, and do they see our file setup? They do see whatever file setup you give them access to. So for example, in that how-tos, if we added a subfolder here beneath how-tos, say 1, 2, 3, and then we move a apple into our 1, 2, 3s. So that's sort of your full enumerated file structure. This is still visible. If we now go to the portal, look at our files. So they'll see that full structure. Basically, if you give them access to something, they'll see sort of up the tree. They won't see down the tree. And they also won't see any files that you don't give them access to. Clients are not able to delete any files from this files view. So basically, once it's uploaded there, you don't have to worry about your clients going in and messing with it. Okay, Carolyn asked, will all files be client-facing? The answer is not by default. So basically, you have the option to hide or show a file, and that is what will make it visible in the portal. All right. Okay. So we've got quite a few more questions here, but I am going to shift gears a little bit and start to talk about our Prepared 29s functionality so that I make sure everyone is well equipped with the software that you already have to see what you need to do in Keeper to help stay on top of your client's vendor list. Okay. So we're going to be talking about the Prepared 29s report today. The Prepared 29s report is in the payee entity review. And if you don't have it, you just need to click add report here. And so then it will show up as an option here and you can add it back. But yeah, your Prepared 29s report, if you click this open, this report is designed to help you stay on top of your client's vendor list every month, and especially in the next 3 months, so that you know how much you've spent with each vendor, what documentation you have on them, what information you may need from them or need from your clients to go get from them. So it's designed to be essentially your workstation for your 1099s filing or 1099s process. Okay, so what does that look like? First and foremost, just like any other Keeper task, you can add checklists here. So if you have a specific process or procedure you want your team to follow, you can add that in here as well. And then down to the actual meat of the report, you'll see what this vendor list is showing. So it's showing any vendors who meet the 1099 threshold. So that's over $600 in IRS eligible spend, where that spend is excluded or excluding any sort of credit card spend. So that means if you have a credit card account and that's used either to pay a bill, so bill payment, or that's used to just like incur an expense, those transactions will get excluded. And then it's also taking into account any accounts you have excluded from your account exclude list. So if you have certain non-reportable spend types, so job supplies and lumber, for example, are non-reportable, you can add them to the exclude list here. And then any transactions that are tied to those accounts will be excluded. One other point is if you have, let's say, a bill that has job supplies on it and contract labor on it, it will go in and exclude just the line item. So you'll only get the contract labor line item included in the spend, whereas the job supplies will be excluded if it's in your excluded list. Important thing to note, all of these settings are modifiable. So you can turn back on credit card spend. You can show all vendors below the spend threshold if you want to see that as well. And then if we actually toggle just down here, down to the actual report, we can see all of our vendors sorted in descending order of spend. And you can see all of the relevant information that you do or don't have on that vendor inside QuickBooks. This report works the exact same way for Xero. So you can still edit emails, addresses, add tax IDs. The one difference here that is actually not super noticeable, but is a minor implementation detail, is where it says 1099 needed. In QuickBooks, that corresponds to the track payments for 1099 checkbox. In Xero, that corresponds to the contact group track or 1099 trackable, I think is what it's called. But it's sort of system generated 1099 trackable. So what happens if you mark this as yes, is that will go in and check the checkbox in QuickBooks, or if you're in Xero, that will also go in and add the contact to that contact group. Just to show you all what that looks like here, I am going to be toggling back and forth a little bit between QuickBooks and Keeper, just so that y'all can see what changes are happening under the hood. So here we can see that this track payments for 1099 checkbox is now checked because we checked it here. One important thing to note is you'll notice this has 3 options, whereas QuickBooks only has 2, checked or unchecked. The reason we added this third option called unknown is because what we found, and certainly what I found when I was reviewing my own books and still do, is you'd look at a vendor and you'd see that the box wasn't checked. And there's no way of knowing whether that box is unchecked because they're a C Corp or that box is unchecked because they just haven't been reviewed. So basically, we have this unknown state, and unknown and no both map to this box being unchecked. So now if I refresh the page here again in QuickBooks, now that I've moved that to an unknown state in Keeper, we can see the box is now unchecked. If I mark this as no, it will keep that box unchecked, but it will also move this vendor out of our review list here. So we can see we've got all of these vendors are for review. That means the 1099 needed checkbox is checked yes or unknown. Basically, it's sort of doing dual work. It's both showing you all of the vendors that may need more documentation. And then if you mark something as no, it will sweep them into this 1099 not needed box. So if we move barley, bramwurst, and bullwinkle, I don't know why I chose a demo vendor that is just like such a mouthful to say, but I did. So if we move this to no, we'll see that moves it here into your 1099 not needed list, basically, so you know you don't need to worry about them. One other pro tip we recommend, especially if you're sort of working with a team or you want to have like some recollection of this later, is you can add a comment. So you can say like, this is a C Corp, or in Rippling's example, maybe this is actually payroll. Doubly doesn't need to be reported, but so any sort of information that you want tied to that vendor, you can add as a comment here, and then it will always be tied to that vendor whenever you go and pull them up. And of course, we mark this as no. Again, now if we look at this in QuickBooks, we'll see that that checkbox is still unchecked. Okay, let's move it back to unknown and come back here to our for review. And all right, so what we've got here is we've got the vendor's name, we've got their total year-to-date spend, we've got their email address, but we're missing their address, we're missing their tax ID, and we don't have any information on whether or not they need a 1099. The reason why we might have those things is we've paid a bill and we've sent it to them via, I don't know, check or ACH or what have you. But we didn't get their W-9 first, or the client paid them and the client didn't get their W-9 first. So at this point, you have two options. You can ask the client to go ask the vendor, or you can ask the vendor directly. If we click ask the client here, basically what this will do is this will add a new non-transaction question into the client portal where the clients can go to give you feedback. So you can say, please upload a W-9. We have these template questions here, for example, and I'll mention if you would prefer to take this burden off of your client's plate, but you don't even have their email address. So like this City Hall, not a great example, but like if you don't even have their email, so you don't even know how to get in touch with this contact or with this vendor, you can also ask the client for an email address. And then once you get the email address, then you can go and request it from the vendor. So here, if we go and add this to the client portal, and now we preview the portal, we'll see they have a new non-transaction question to please upload a W-9 for barley, bramwurst, and bullwinkle. Once they upload a file, you'll see the file attachment both here as well as in your non-transaction questions. I'm going to actually go ahead and delete this now and then talk a little bit about vendor requests. So vendor requests is the logical extension of this report that lets you actually ask for the thing that you may be missing. So here, we need to get a W-9 from barley, bramwurst, and bullwinkle. All we need to do that is click this ask vendor option. Here we can specify the sort of information. This will autofill with please give us your W-9. And then we can choose to email the vendor. And then we can also choose to CC the client. So if we CC the client, the reason we have this feature there, sometimes it helps build a little bit of like extra legitimacy with the vendor. The vendor may not know who you are, like where this is coming from, what the deal is. But if you have the client on CC'd, the vendor can respond to the email if they want, and the clients will be able to sort of put them at ease. And then also sometimes just having the client on CC'd helps with the response rates of these. So you can choose to CC the client as well. With the email vendor, you can also choose how this is built out. So you can give us your W-9 request. You can edit anything here as well. We have a pre-built template by default, but you can change it however you prefer. All right. So we're going to just go ahead and add the request. And one thing I'll mention, if you don't check that, you can also just grab the W-9. So for example, let's say you wanted to text this to someone. You can just, once you ask the question, you uncheck the box. You can also click copy vendor request link. And then if we open that in incognito, or you can open it in a regular window as well. But if we open that, you can see this is just like, this is the full vendor request link that the vendor can use to fill out their W-9. Okay, a couple options here. So they have either the ability to drag and drop a file. And if they're on mobile, by the way, if they click this, this will open up their camera so they can take a picture of their W-9. And so they can either drag and drop a file, or they can click here to fill out a new W-9. This W-9, if they click here to fill out a new W-9, this gives them the ability to essentially walk through a form filling experience. And then choose all of their options. And then at the end, I'll actually go through and fill this out so that we have this full comprehensive understanding here. So let's say we're an LLC, taxed as a C Corp. This is BB&B LLC. Okay. And then one of the other things we added here is you can now finally collect electronic delivery consent here in the vendor requests as well. All right, so that's all they have to do. They fill it out. They get some nice little confetti that makes them want to fill out new W-9s requests in the future. And then on your end, if we rerun this report here, we need to actually refresh the page to see that show up as answered. But here our client sees, or we'll see here, we now have that W-9. We actually go ahead and refresh the page. All right, so now we can see this has been responded to. And if we click here as well, so we see the W-9 on the left, and we see the vendor information over here on the right. One really nice feature that you can take advantage of if they fill out the form fill experience is you can click autofill, and then that will update all of this information with the information that's available here as well. We can also mark the W-9 as now on file. We can say they are taxed as a C Corp. Yeah, LLC taxed as C Corp. So we don't need the 1099. And then basically we save this here, and that will save all this information back to QuickBooks. We can also upload this vendor W-9 as an attachment back to QuickBooks as well. And then lastly, we're going to mark this as 1099 not needed equals no. And that will also, as you see, move BB&B over to the 1099 not needed filter. So you can also see here now all of this information has been synced and updated on these columns here. And then also if we go back to QuickBooks, we'll see we've got their email address, we've got their new vendor name here, we've got their address, we've got that attachment here as well. We'll click this open. And so this, by the way, this is what you'll see. So this is a full PDF. You can download it, you can print it. So all they had to do was fill out that form. That form also looks great on mobile, and you get your full W-9 just the way you'd expect it. We also have their EIN here. So you can see that. This box says no because the 1099 was not needed since they were a C Corp. And yeah, so everything you need is right here available in QuickBooks and also available here in Keeper. All right, a couple other things I'll mention, just sort of minor details. So if you have a W-9, you can upload that here as well, same basic process. Also, you can edit any of this information here as well. So if you wanted to edit this back to a different vendor name, you could do that. You can change their email address, their tax or their address, their tax ID. All of that information is modifiable and of course syncs back to QuickBooks. A couple other interesting things I'll mention. You can also click into this toggle right here as well and see all of your included and all of your total vendor transactions. So here, for example, we can see any individual transactions. We can see what their totals were. If for some reason we had a particular transaction that we wanted to exclude from our reportable total, we could also exclude that here as well. And you can also see any other vendor transactions that may not have been excluded based on their exclusion list criteria. All right, so that is most of everything we've got here on the Prepared 99s report. I am going to share two more quick things about requesting this information from vendors directly. And so that is, if we come back here to the top, we've got our vendor requests. So the last thing I want to talk about is static vendor request links. Static vendor request links are a way to give your clients a single link that they can send to any vendor to get their W-9. So the best practice for document collection and W-9 collection with regard to accounts payable is you only send the payment after you get the W-9. I know this is something that's really hard for a lot of bookkeepers who either aren't doing the payables or are doing the payables but are beholden to the way the client wants to do business. But with static vendor request links, you can just copy this link, send it to your clients, or even put it in your client's resources here. You can say, here's your vendor request link. If you ever lose it, it's like right back here, just go and get it. And then that vendor request link is basically an open portal where any vendor, they can send it to any vendor, and that vendor can upload their W-9, and then you'll get a notification, and they'll get a notification. The client will get a notification as well, and that will be the sort of trigger to pay. And the really nice thing about this is basically it lets you put some of that onus of document requests on the client to help make this process a lot smoother, a lot easier. So we actually, I'm not sure if people here are in the audience, but some folks here, we've actually are actually our vendors as well. And we've sent them these vendor requests, and it's a super easy, super straightforward process to get that new W-9. One last thing I want to share about the vendor requests portal is you can also actually advertise your own firm services. So here in the bottom left-hand corner, we've got this little link. You can customize what this link goes to and customize what it says and customize if it shows up at all. So your standard full flexibility that you get within every feature in Keeper. And basically, this is a way so that if you send a vendor request, you're already doing that work, and this just lets you get a little bit of advertising out there, sort of like putting your name on the back of your truck if you're a plumber, just like one more way of getting more mileage, getting your name out there. And this actually we've seen is really, really helpful with some firms. They'll send vendor requests, and 1 out of every 20, 30, 40 requests will turn into a new customer. So this is, you're already doing your work, and it lets you advertise your firm services at no added cost. Just to be fully comprehensive here on this training, I'll show where you can customize that. So it's in your practice settings, you go to client portal, and you go to vendor requests. So here you can choose if you want to show it at all, what link it points to. This won't actually point to keeper.app. By default, this will point to your portal's URL. So if you have like clients.mypracticename, it'll point by default to mypracticename.com. So it'll just go to basically your homepage. But you can customize this with a 1099s or W-9 specific landing page or a Calendly link or whatever you feel like would be the best fit. And then you can, of course, customize this text here as well. All right. And with that, that's going to go ahead and just about wrap our 1099s training. So I'm going to go ahead and pause now, and I will turn things back over to the Q&A and see if I can answer any questions about that. All right. Looking at, doesn't look like there are any questions on 1099, so hopefully that means I did a good job explaining things. So with that, I'll go ahead and answer maybe a couple more questions here, and then we will wrap things up with the webinar. Okay, I have client-specific tasks marked as done, but they still hang out. Do I have to have a date to get these tasks to fall off? I assume by this, Judy, you mean client-specific tasks are non-closing tasks. So if you have a non-closing task and you mark it as complete, it should get moved to your completed section. If you are not seeing that and it is a non-closing task, go ahead and write into the chat. So chat bottom right here as well, and they will be able to take a look at your specific file and get you a response, or if it's a bug, we can get that fixed as well. If it is not a non-closing task, so if it's in your sort of closing tasks, they actually all stick around here indefinitely, so you can see all of the work that you've done for this particular close. And then when you start a new close, they will basically copy over, so you'll get a new set of tasks for each month that you run the close. Oh, actually, there were some 1099 requests. I did not see those at the bottom, so I'm going to turn back to those. Okay. Teresa asked, how can you tell if they've agreed to receive their 1099 electronically? Great question. So if you have a vendor request, basically, if they have that box checked, you'll be able to see if they give e-filing consent. And so we walked through what that looks like. If you upload the, if you sort of fill out the form, there's that e-signing checkbox at the bottom. Also on your static vendor request links. Sorry, actually, this works for static vendor request links or anything else. If they submit this here, they'll be able to add their email here as well, and then also consent to electronic delivery of 1099s. So that's sort of baked into the vendor request functionality as well. Okay, if the W9 states the type of entity, can Keeper give the user the option to check off the entity type to help determine if a 1099 is not needed? Keeper gives the user the option. I'm not sure I'm understanding this. Is this essentially like if it's an LLC taxed as a like taxed an individual, that would autofill to 1099 not needed equals no? If so, that would make sense. Not something we have, definitely something we could add. Okay, Lisa asked, can we get a recording of the 1099 of just the 1099 workflow to send to our team? The answer is yes. In fact, this whole recording will be available. We'll have both the broader webinar available, as well as the more narrower just how 1099s work, just how vendor requests work, split out as a separate YouTube video so that you can send to your team for training. Okay, Cindy asked, regarding the link that you give to your clients to collect vendor W9s, the static vendor request links, that link is different for each client, right? But the vendor would see my logo and not the client's name. Is that correct? That is correct. So this link is unique just to that client, but it will show up with your branding because it is your domain. We could add an option to add the client's logo here as well if you feel like that would make things more personal. No reason not to do that other than no one's asked for it before. But yeah, so this link is unique per each client. Lisa asked, the vendor request link, is it in the portal? And when they upload the W9, does it appear in files? So the answer to both of those questions is sort of no and or it depends. So by default, the vendor request link is not in the portal, although you can very easily add it to your resources right here. So you just click your vendor requests here, copy your link, and then go to your portal settings and then add it. In this case, I've already added it. And once you add it to your resources, then that will show up in your client's portal in their resources. This is there's that. And then when the clients upload it, at first it will just show up in your client, when the vendors upload a file, it will at first just show up in your vendor requests. And then at that point, you can mark it as resolved. If you attach it to a vendor, it will show up in your vendor files, but not by default into your file system. But you can always move files around as you want. Okay. Carolyn asked for a 1099 question, will there be an option to add exclusions for Venmo expenses? That's a great question. And fun fact, Venmo actually makes this even more complex because if you pay an individual over Venmo, they don't send a 1099K. But if you pay a business over Venmo, they do send a 1099K. So I'm not exactly sure how we sort of ultimately, as bookkeepers, trace back to that. But we are working on some functionality over the next couple of months before the deadline to filter out basically by check number. So you'll be able to put in like Venmo as a check number and auto exclude those as well. Okay, Dana asked about debit card payments from a regular bank account. So that is something that will also be sort of better handled in a exclusion based on check number system. Robin asked, is the vendor request link for both standard and white label users? You do need to be on Keeper Premium with a white label portal URL set up in order to take advantage of vendor requests. Okay, Betsy asked, does the Prepared 1099s report keep track of what is eligible for a 1099 and what isn't? For example, Jane Doe paid $100 for software and $600 for consulting. Will it 1099 her for $700, or does Keeper only know to 1099 for consulting? This is an interesting broader question. I'm not 100% positive. I thought software was in fact generally eligible for 1099s, but you could imagine this question being asked about like specific products and labor that may be more clear. But anyways, the way that you can sort of determine what transactions or what line items get included or excluded in the Prepared 1099s report is by managing your excluded list. So if you add an account to the excluded list, that should not be included in your 1099 reportable spend. That will filter all of the spend related to that transaction from your sort of year-to-date reportable totals here. Okay, someone asked here, can you use the W9 feature for clients who are not on QBO or Xero? At the moment, no. At the moment, it does need to be on a connected QuickBooks or Xero client. Okay, someone asked, is there any way you can personally find out if a vendor is a corporation without asking the client? Theoretically, I guess you could do a state-by-state search if you somehow know like where they're incorporated, but not what entity type they are. There's no way you can do that in Keeper, to my knowledge. I mean, you can ask them a vendor request and not CC the client. But I think maybe a broader information question than just like functionality of Keeper. Ray asked, does the 1099 on file information carry over from year to year? The answer is yes. So if you mark this as yes, this will stay unchecked or stay checked or unchecked accordingly. And then 2022 filed, 2023 filed, that will roll over. So in the new year, it'll say 2023 filed, and then that will be unchecked. All right. Well, I think we are going to go ahead and draw it to a close. I have some other Q&A questions that we were not able to get to. So we'll see if we can download these and export them so we can get y'all back questions as well. But you're also welcome to pop into our chat and ask us a question if you need a response. And we will be happy to get you on your way accordingly. So with that, I am going to wish everyone a happy Halloween. Thank you all so much for taking the time. In case you had to dip out or you weren't on this recording at all, we will be distributing a recording of this on YouTube, and we'll send out the link in our update on Thursday so that everyone has access to it and so that you can share it with your team if anyone wasn't able to make this call. But yeah, thank you all folks so much for taking the time. It was a pleasure as always, and I look forward to seeing some of you at QuickBooks Connect in a couple of weeks and more of y'all on this webinar same time, same date next month.